Before we dive into this shocking story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. You won't believe what happens next. Enjoy the story. My name is Harrison Blackwell, and I'm 72 years old. For 45 years, I built an empire from nothing: real estate, technology investments, manufacturing. My net worth, let's just say it has more zeros than most people see in a lifetime. But none of that mattered on that grey Tuesday morning in Dr. Mitchell's office. "Mr. Blackwell," he said, adjusting his glasses with the weight of bad news, "I'm afraid the tests confirm our suspicions. You have early-stage Alzheimer's disease." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Alzheimer's, the disease that steals your mind piece by piece, leaving behind an empty shell. I felt my world tilting on its axis. But what happened next? That's what changed everything. My daughter Cassandra, my only child, was sitting right beside me. I expected comfort, maybe tears, perhaps her hand reaching for mine. Instead, I heard her whisper into her phone. She thought I couldn't hear her clearly. "Yes, Mom would have wanted this. I can't wait for him to forget everything. Finally, finally, finally." I turned to look at her, this beautiful 38-year-old woman I'd given everything to. Designer clothes, luxury cars, a penthouse apartment, credit cards with no limits. She was typing furiously on her phone, and I caught a glimpse of her screen. Dad, officially diagnosed, moving forward with the plan. The plan. Dr. Mitchell was still talking about treatment options, support groups, medications that might slow the progression. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was watching my daughter, my princess, my heir, my greatest disappointment, and seeing her for what she truly was for the first time. She looked up and caught me staring. Immediately her expression shifted to one of practiced concern. "Oh, Daddy," she said, reaching for my hand with perfectly manicured nails. "We'll get through this together. Don't you worry about anything. I'll take care of everything." Take care of everything. The way she said it made my blood run cold. As we left the doctor's office, Cassandra was already on another call. I heard fragments: power of attorney, incapacity, sooner than expected. That's when I realized something terrifying. My daughter wasn't just waiting for me to forget everything. She was planning to help it happen faster. But here's what Cassandra didn't know about her old man. I've been playing chess while she's been playing checkers her entire life. And even with Alzheimer's starting to knock at the door of my mind, I still had more moves left than she could ever imagine. The real game was just beginning. We drove home in my Bentley. Well, she drove. Cassandra insisted, saying I shouldn't be behind the wheel anymore. "For safety, Daddy," she'd said with that sweet smile that used to melt my heart. Now it just made my skin crawl. My mansion in Beverly Hills had been my sanctuary for 20 years. 12 bedrooms, marble floors, a wine cellar worth more than most people's houses. But as we pulled through the iron gates, it felt different, like I was entering enemy territory. "Why don't you rest, Dad? I'll handle some calls," Cassandra said, already pulling out her phone before we'd even parked. I nodded and shuffled toward my study, playing the part of the confused, tired old man. But my hearing was still sharp, and the acoustics in this house were something I knew intimately. From my leather chair, I could hear every word of her first call. "Richard, yes, it's official. Early-stage Alzheimer's. I know, it's heartbreaking." Her voice dripped with fake emotion. "We need to move fast on the conservatorship petition. How soon can we get before a judge?" Conservatorship? My hands gripped the armrests of my chair. She wanted legal control over my life, my decisions, my fortune. The second call was even worse. "Dr. Reeves, Cassandra Blackwell. My father was just diagnosed." "Yes, Harrison Blackwell, the businessman." "Listen, I need documentation that he's declining faster than normal. Mental competency issues, confusion, inability to make sound decisions." "What do you mean, ethics? This is about protecting him from himself." I felt bile rise in my throat. She was trying to buy a doctor to lie about my condition. But the third call, that's what nearly gave me a heart attack. "Mom's insurance money finally makes sense now, doesn't it?" she was saying. 20 years I've waited for this moment. Dad thinks he's so smart, but he never suspected what really happened to her. My wife Margaret died in a car accident 20 years ago. Sudden brake failure on a rainy night. I'd mourned her for years, blamed myself for not being there, for working too much. What did Cassandra mean by Mum's insurance money? What really happened? I heard her heels clicking across the marble floor, heading toward the kitchen. I quickly grabbed a book and pretended to be reading, though the words swam before my eyes. She appeared in the doorway, all concern and sweetness again. "Daddy, are you feeling okay? You look pale." "Just tired, sweetheart," I managed to say. "This is a lot to process." "Of course it is." She sat on the arm of my chair, stroking my grey hair like I was a child. "But don't you worry about anything. I've already called our lawyer, our accountant, even found a wonderful care facility that specializes in memory care." Care facility. She meant a nursing home. She meant to lock me away. "Isn't it a bit early for that?" I asked carefully. "Oh, Daddy," she laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. "You don't understand how quickly these things progress. It's better to be prepared. Besides, you won't even remember this conversation next week." But I would remember. Every single word was burning itself into my brain like acid. That night, alone in my bedroom, I made a decision. If my daughter thought she could play games with a man who'd built an empire through cunning and strategy, she was about to learn the hardest lesson of her privileged life. I opened my laptop and began to research everything I could about conservatorships, about elder abuse, about how children steal from their aging parents. And I started to plan. The next morning, I woke up with the clarity of a man who'd been given a death sentence and decided to fight back. Cassandra thought she was dealing with a confused old fool. She was about to discover she was hunting a lion who was very much still dangerous. I called my office and told my assistant I'd be working from home for a few weeks. "Doctor's orders," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Then I began my investigation. First stop, my home security system. I'd installed state-of-the-art cameras throughout the house 5 years ago after a break-in attempt. Motion sensors, audio recording, cloud storage. Cassandra had grown so comfortable in this house, she'd forgotten about them entirely. I spent 3 hours reviewing footage from the past month. What I found made my blood boil. There was Cassandra, 2 weeks before my diagnosis, in my study at 2 a.m., photographing documents from my safe. She knew the combination. I'd given it to her years ago for emergencies. She was photographing bank statements, investment portfolios, my will. Another video showed her meeting with a man I didn't recognize in my own living room while I was at a business dinner. They were spreading papers across my coffee table, pointing at documents, laughing. The timestamp showed this was 3 weeks ago. The audio was crystal clear. "Once we get him declared incompetent, you'll have full access to transfer the assets. My fee is still 20% of the liquid holdings." 20%. She was paying someone 20% of my liquid assets, roughly $40 million, to help her steal from me. I paused the video and stared at my daughter's face. She looked excited, thrilled even. This wasn't a desperate daughter trying to protect her ailing father. This was a predator who'd been circling her prey for weeks, maybe months. But the worst discovery came when I accessed my financial accounts online. Someone had been making small transfers, 50,000 here, 100,000 there. Amounts small enough not to trigger immediate attention, but large enough to add up. In the past 6 months, nearly $2 million had been moved to accounts I didn't recognize. The signatures on the transfer authorizations looked like mine, but they weren't. Someone had been practicing my signature, and they'd gotten very good at it. I picked up my phone and called Marcus Rivera, my head of security at Blackwell Industries. Marcus had been with me for 15 years, a former FBI agent who'd saved my company from corporate espionage twice. "Marcus, I need you to run a private investigation. Quietly. I need to know everything about someone's activities over the past 6 months." "Of course, Mr. Blackwell. Who's the target?" The words felt like broken glass in my throat. "My daughter." There was a long pause. "Sir, are you sure about this?" I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I need phone records, financial transactions, travel records, associations, everything. And Marcus, she can't know about this. Understood, sir. I'll have a preliminary report within 48 hours. After I hung up, I sat in my study and looked at the family photos on my desk. Cassandra, as a little girl on my shoulders, her graduation from Stanford, her wedding day, though that marriage had lasted only 2 years before she divorced him and took half his family's money. The signs had always been there. I'd just been too much of a loving father to see them. That afternoon, Cassandra came by with lunch from my favorite restaurant. She was all smiles and concern, asking about my symptoms, suggesting I see another doctor for a second opinion. "I've been thinking," she said, picking at her salad. "Maybe you should sign some papers just as a precaution, in case the disease progresses faster than expected." "What kind of papers?" I asked, though I already knew. "Just some legal documents, power of attorney, healthcare directives, things to protect you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila folder. "I had Richard draft everything. You just need to sign." Richard Peterson, our family lawyer for 20 years, a man I'd trusted completely. Had she gotten to him too? I opened the folder and began to read. It wasn't just power of attorney. It was a complete transfer of control over my life, my business, my assets. If I signed this, I'd become a prisoner in my own life. "This seems rather comprehensive," I said carefully. "Oh, Daddy, you know how complicated these legal things are. Richard says it's all standard." I looked up at her. "And what happens if I don't want to sign?" For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something cold and calculating flash across her face before the sweet smile returned. "Well, of course, that's your choice. But if you're not legally protected and something happens, well, the state could take everything. You wouldn't want strangers controlling your life, would you?" It was a threat wrapped in concern. "Sign willingly, or she'd find another way." "Let me think about it overnight," I said. "Of course, Daddy. Take all the time you need." But her eyes said something different. Time was running out. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me wonder if Cassandra was sneaking around again, looking for more ways to destroy me. By dawn, I'd made a decision that would change everything. I needed allies, but who could I trust? She'd already gotten to Richard Peterson, our family lawyer. My accountant, David Chen, might be compromised too. Even my business partners could be influenced by the promise of deals with my heir apparent. Then I remembered something. 2 weeks ago, Maria Santos, my housekeeper of 12 years, had tried to tell me something about Cassandra. I'd been rushing to a meeting and brushed her off. Now I wondered what she'd wanted to say. Maria arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, as she had every Tuesday and Friday for over a decade. She was a small woman in her 50s, but her eyes missed nothing. She'd raised 5 children, buried a husband, and worked 3 jobs to put her kids through college. If anyone could see through Cassandra's act, it would be Maria. I found her in the kitchen preparing my breakfast with the same care she always had. "Maria," I said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She looked up from the eggs she was scrambling, her dark eyes serious. "What is it, Mr. Blackwell? 2 weeks ago, you wanted to tell me something about Cassandra. What was it?" Maria set down her spatula and looked around the kitchen as if checking for hidden listeners. Then she moved closer to me. "Mr. B, I didn't want to cause trouble, but..." She took a deep breath. "Miss Cassandra, she's been bringing people here when you're not home. Men in suits. They go through your papers, take pictures of things." My heart pounded, but I kept my voice calm. "How long has this been going on?" "Maybe 4 months now." "And sir?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I heard her on the phone once. She was talking about your wife, Mrs. Margaret. She said something about making sure the investigation stayed closed." "Investigation? What investigation?" "Margaret died in an accident 20 years ago. There was never any investigation beyond the standard police report." "Maria, this is very important. Can you remember exactly what she said?" "She said, the mechanic did what we paid him for, and the insurance money came through clean. After 20 years, nobody's going to ask questions now." The room started spinning. I gripped the kitchen counter to steady myself. The mechanic. Paid him for what? "Sir, are you okay? Should I call the doctor?" "No," I said firmly. "Maria, I need to ask you for a huge favor, and it might be dangerous." She squared her shoulders. "Mr. B, you gave my son a scholarship to college when we couldn't afford it. You paid for my husband's cancer treatments when insurance wouldn't cover them. You've been more than an employer to my family. What do you need?" I felt tears threaten my eyes. Here was loyalty I'd forgotten existed. "I need you to help me catch my daughter stealing from me. And possibly," I couldn't say the words out loud yet, "possibly doing much worse." Maria's face hardened. I knew that girl was poison. Even as a child, she had ice in her veins. "What do you want me to do?" "Listen." We spent the next hour planning. Maria would continue her normal routine, but would listen carefully to any conversations, document any suspicious visitors, and most importantly, she would help me access areas of the house when Cassandra thought I was resting or confused. At 10 a.m. my phone rang. Marcus Rivera. "Mr. Blackwell, I have that preliminary report. You're not going to like it. Tell me everything. Your daughter has been in contact with a man named Vincent Torino. He's what we call a financial facilitator. Helps people move money around without leaving obvious trails. He's been investigated twice by the FBI, but never convicted. My worst fears were being confirmed. There's more, sir. She's been meeting regularly with Dr. Kenneth Reeves, a psychiatrist who's been sanctioned twice for falsifying mental competency evaluations. And Mr. Blackwell?" Marcus paused. "She's been researching something else. She's been looking into how to have someone committed involuntarily." Involuntary commitment. She wanted to have me locked away in a mental institution. "How soon can you get me a complete financial audit?" I asked. "I'm already on it. But sir, there's something else you need to know. I ran a background check on the mechanic who worked on your wife's car 20 years ago, Frank Delacourt. He died in a house fire 3 months after Mrs. Blackwell's accident. The fire was ruled suspicious, but the investigation went cold. 3 months after Margaret died. A convenient death for someone who might have known too much. I hung up and stared out the window at the garden Margaret had loved so much. Had my own daughter killed her mother? And now, was she planning to kill me too, or just destroy my mind so thoroughly that death would be a mercy? But Cassandra had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the old man she thought was losing his mind, and she'd forgotten that I'd spent 45 years building an empire by outthinking my enemies. It was time to show her what a real predator looked like. The next morning I began my counterattack, but first I had to become someone I'd never been before, a convincing liar to my own daughter. When Cassandra arrived for our family breakfast, something she'd started insisting on since the diagnosis, I was ready for her. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, deliberately letting my coffee cup shake slightly in my hands. I had the strangest dream last night. Or was it real? I can't remember. Her eyes lit up like a predator sensing weakness. "What do you mean, Daddy? I thought I saw your mother in the kitchen. She was making pancakes just like she used to." I let my voice waver with confusion. "But that's impossible, isn't it? Margaret's been gone for how long now?" 20 years, Dad," Cassandra said gently, but I caught the excitement she was trying to hide. "The doctor said confusion about time and memory would get worse." Perfect. She was taking the bait. "Maybe you're right about those papers," I said, pulling out the power of attorney documents she'd brought yesterday. "If I'm going to start forgetting things." "Oh, Daddy, I think that's very wise." She practically lunged for her purse to get a pen, but I wasn't ready to spring that trap yet. I had bigger plans. Let me read through them one more time. My mind feels clearer in the mornings." Her face fell slightly, but she nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need." After she left, I got to work on the real plan. I called my bank, not the main branch where everyone knew Cassandra, but a smaller private banking division I'd used for international transactions. "This is Harrison Blackwell. I need to set up several new accounts under a subsidiary company. Maximum privacy protocols. Within hours, I'd created a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts. If Cassandra thought she knew where my money was, she was about to get a very unpleasant surprise. Then I made the most important call of all. "Jonathan Meyer's office," came the crisp voice of a secretary. Jonathan Meyer was the one lawyer in Los Angeles that Cassandra had never met because he specialized in something very specific: prosecuting financial elder abuse. He'd sent 3 children to prison for stealing from their parents. "This is Harrison Blackwell. I need to speak with Mr. Meyer immediately. It's about my daughter trying to steal $40 billion from me." I was in his office within 2 hours. "Mr. Blackwell," Jonathan said after I'd laid out everything I knew, "what you're describing isn't just theft. If your suspicions about your wife's death are correct, we're talking about murder. Are you prepared for what this might mean?" "I'm prepared to see justice done, whatever the cost. Then we're going to need evidence, hard evidence. Can you get it?" That's when I told him about Maria, about the security cameras, about Marcus Rivera's investigation. "We'll need more than that," Jonathan said. "We need her to incriminate herself. Are you willing to wear a wire?" A wire. At 72 years old, with early-stage Alzheimer's, I was going to become an undercover agent against my own daughter. "Set it up," I said. That evening, Cassandra came for dinner. She'd brought Chinese takeout from my favorite restaurant, playing the loving daughter role to perfection. "How are you feeling today, Dad? Any more confusion?" "Some," I lied, touching the tiny recording device Jonathan's team had helped me conceal under my shirt. "I keep thinking about your mother. Do you think she would have wanted me to sign those papers?" "Oh, Daddy, Mom would have wanted you to be safe and cared for. She would have wanted me to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Cassandra set down her chopsticks and looked at me with what seemed like genuine emotion. For a moment I wondered if I'd been wrong about everything. "From people who might take advantage of you. From making decisions when your mind isn't clear. From—" She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "From suffering the way Mom did." "You know, what do you mean, the way Mom suffered?" "Oh, you know, the accident. How scared she must have been in those final moments." But there was something in her voice, something cold and satisfied. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if she hadn't driven that night? If the brakes hadn't failed?" Cassandra's expression changed subtly. "Brakes don't just fail, Dad. Sometimes things happen for a reason." "What kind of reason?" She looked directly at me, and for just a moment, I saw the real Cassandra. Not the loving daughter, not the concerned child, but something else entirely. "Sometimes people outlive their usefulness," she said quietly. "Sometimes the people who love them have to make difficult decisions." My blood turned to ice, but I kept my voice steady. "What kind of difficult decisions?" She smiled then, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The kind that ensure everyone gets what they deserve. Mom got her peace. I got my inheritance from her life insurance, and now—" She reached across the table and patted my hand. "Now it's time for you to get your peace too, Daddy." I had what I needed. My own daughter had just confessed to murdering my wife and threatened to do the same to me, but I wasn't done with her yet, not even close. The recording was perfect. Jonathan Meyer called it the most damning confession I've heard in 30 years of prosecution. But we both knew it wasn't enough yet. We needed more evidence, more accomplices, more of her network exposed. "We need her to believe she's winning," Jonathan advised. "Make her overconfident. When predators think they have complete control, they get sloppy." So I began the most difficult performance of my life, pretending to deteriorate rapidly. The next morning, when Cassandra arrived for breakfast, I was sitting in my pajamas in the living room, staring blankly at a turned-off television. "Daddy, are you okay?" I looked up at her with what I hoped was confusion. "Margaret, is that you? You look different." I saw the excitement flash across her face before she schooled her expression into concern. "No, Dad, it's me, Cassandra, your daughter." "Cassandra?" I frowned as if trying to remember. "I thought you were still at Stanford. When did you graduate?" 15 years ago, Dad, don't you remember?" I shook my head slowly. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Everything feels foggy today." She sat beside me, but I could feel her energy, her barely contained excitement. This was happening faster than she dared hope. "Dad, I think we need to call Dr. Mitchell. This seems like a significant decline." "Decline from what?" I asked, letting my voice sound genuinely confused. Within hours, she'd arranged for Dr. Kenneth Reeves, the corrupt psychiatrist Marcus had identified, to come to the house for an emergency evaluation. Dr. Reeves was a thin man with cold eyes and soft hands that had never done an honest day's work. He spoke to me like I was a child, asking simple questions designed to make me look incompetent. "Mr. Blackwell, can you tell me what year it is?" 1987, I said uncertainly. "And who is the president?" "Reagan, of course." I looked around confused. "Isn't it?" Behind Dr. Reeves, I could see Cassandra nodding approvingly. This was exactly what she wanted to hear. "Mr. Blackwell," Dr. Reeves said in a voice dripping with false sympathy, "I'm going to recommend immediate supervised care. Your condition has progressed much faster than typical." "What does that mean?" I asked, playing the confused father perfectly. "It means your daughter will need to make important decisions for you, for your own safety." That afternoon, Cassandra brought 3 more people to the house. Richard Peterson, our compromised family lawyer, Vincent Torino, the financial facilitator Marcus had identified, and a woman I didn't recognize. They thought I was napping upstairs, but I was actually listening through the ventilation system, a trick I'd learned during corporate espionage attempts on my companies. "The evaluation is perfect," Cassandra was saying. "Dr. Reeves says we can move forward immediately with full conservatorship." "What about resistance from his business partners?" asked the woman's voice. "They think he's been declining for months. I've been laying the groundwork, telling them he's been making erratic decisions, forgetting meetings. They'll be relieved someone competent is taking over." Vincent Torino's gravelly voice cut in. "And the offshore accounts you mentioned? He's been moving money around, but the old fool doesn't understand modern banking. I've been tracking every transfer. Once I have legal control, we can reverse everything and consolidate it properly." My heart pounded. She'd been tracking my recent moves. That meant she might know about the shell companies I'd created. "What about potential investigation?" Richard Peterson asked nervously. "Who's going to investigate?" Cassandra laughed coldly. "A confused old man with Alzheimer's signing over his fortune to his loving daughter? It's the most natural thing in the world." "And if he becomes difficult to manage?" the woman asked. "Then we'll have to consider Sunset Manor," Cassandra replied. I didn't know what Sunset Manor was, but the way she said it made my skin crawl. "Remind me what happens at Sunset Manor," Torino said. "It's a private facility that specializes in difficult cases, patients who might be prone to making accusations or causing problems. They have very effective treatment protocols for managing behavioral issues." Treatment protocols. She was talking about drugging me into a vegetative state. "And if that doesn't work?" Peterson asked quietly. "Dad's 72 with a degenerative brain disease," Cassandra said matter-of-factly. "These things progress. Sometimes faster than expected. Sometimes patients just fade away. Like Mom did. She was planning to murder me just like she'd murdered Margaret." "When do we move?" Torino asked. "Tomorrow morning. I'll bring the final papers for him to sign. Dr. Reeves says his lucid moments are becoming rare, so we need to act while he can still hold a pen. They were planning to have me sign my death warrant in less than 24 hours. I crawled back through the house to my bedroom and immediately called Jonathan Meyer. "They're moving tomorrow," I whispered. "And Jonathan? I think they're planning to kill me." "We're ready," he said. "FBI is standing by, but Harrison, you need to be very careful tomorrow. If she suspects you're not as confused as you seem." "I know," I said, "but there's something else, a place called Sunset Manor. Can you look into it?" 3 hours later, he called back. His voice was grim. "Harrison, Sunset Manor is a private psychiatric facility that's been investigated twice for suspicious patient deaths. Patients go in for behavioral management and end up dying from complications. If she gets you there, then I need to end this tomorrow," I said, "before she has the chance." But I had one more card to play, one final surprise that none of them saw coming. And tomorrow, they were all going to learn that you should never underestimate a lion, even when he's pretending to be a lamb. The morning arrived grey and cold, like the universe itself knew something terrible was about to happen. I sat in my study, wearing my bathrobe and slippers, the picture of a confused old man, ready to sign his life away. But underneath my shirt, the recording device was capturing every word, and in my pocket, my phone was connected to Jonathan Meyer's office. Cassandra arrived at exactly 9 a.m. with her entourage of vultures, Dr. Reeves, Vincent Torino, Richard Peterson, and the woman I now knew was Dr. Elena Vasquez from Sunset Manor. They moved through my house like they already owned it. "Good morning, Daddy," Cassandra said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "How are you feeling today?" "Tired," I mumbled, letting my shoulders slump. "Very tired and confused. I don't understand why all these people are here." "They're here to help you, Mr. Blackwell," Dr. Reeves said condescendingly. "We have some simple papers for you to sign, and then you won't have to worry about anything anymore." They spread the documents across my coffee table like they were dealing cards in a rigged game. Power of attorney, conservatorship papers, healthcare directives, and at the bottom of the stack, something that made my blood freeze: admission papers to Sunset Manor. "What's this one?" I asked, pointing to the admission papers with a shaking finger. "Oh, that's just a backup plan, Daddy," Cassandra said. "In case you need more specialized care than we can provide at home." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, a tall woman with dead eyes and a smile that belonged in a morgue. "Mr. Blackwell, Sunset Manor is a beautiful facility where you can be comfortable and safe. No worries, no stress, just peace and quiet. Peace and quiet. Permanent peace and quiet." "I don't want to go anywhere," I said, my voice trembling, though not entirely from acting. "I want to stay in my home." "Of course you do," Cassandra said, sitting beside me and taking my hand. Her touch felt like ice. "But sometimes what we want and what's best for us are different things. Remember how Mom used to say that? She was using Margaret's memory to manipulate me into signing my own death warrant." "Your mother never said anything like that," I said quietly. Cassandra's mask slipped for just a moment. "Dad, your memory isn't reliable anymore. Mom said lots of things you don't remember. Did she say anything when you killed her?" The room went completely silent. Every person froze except Cassandra, whose face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, calculation, and finally, cold rage. "Daddy, you're confused. Mom died in an accident. You know that." "I know what Frank Delacourt told you after he sabotaged her brakes. I know about the insurance money. I know about the house fire that killed him 3 months later." I looked directly into her eyes. "I know everything, Cassandra." Dr. Reeves stepped forward nervously. "Mr. Blackwell, these kinds of paranoid delusions are common with Alzheimer's patients. Your daughter loves you and would never—" "Shut up," Cassandra snapped, dropping her sweet facade completely. She turned back to me, and for the first time in my life, I saw my daughter as she really was. "How much do you actually remember, old man?" "Everything that matters, including the conversation we had 2 nights ago, where you confessed to murdering your mother." Vincent Torino moved toward the door, but Cassandra held up a hand. "Nobody leaves. Not yet." She looked at me with something that might have been respect if it wasn't accompanied by pure hatred. "You've been playing us. The same way you've been playing me for months, maybe years. How long have you known?" "Since the day you said you couldn't wait for me to forget everything, since I realized my loving daughter was actually a sociopathic killer who's been planning my death for 20 years. Dr. Vasquez spoke up nervously. "Perhaps we should postpone this meeting." "There is no postponement," Cassandra said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "He knows too much, and he's clearly not as sick as we thought. We're finishing this today." "What does that mean?" Richard Peterson asked, though his face suggested he already knew. "It means Daddy's going to have a sudden medical emergency, right here, right now. Dr. Reeves, you'll document his complete mental breakdown. Dr. Vasquez, you'll sedate him for his own safety. And then we'll transport him to Sunset Manor for emergency psychiatric care. And if he tries to tell people what he knows, Torino asked. Cassandra smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Who's going to believe a confused old man with Alzheimer's who's having paranoid delusions about his loving daughter murdering people, especially when all his medical records show rapid cognitive decline? She moved closer to me, and I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with something else, something that smelled like death. You should have just signed the papers, Daddy. You should have gone quietly like a good little lamb. But no, you had to be clever. You had to fight back. She leaned down until her face was inches from mine. Do you know what happened to Mom in those final moments when she realized her brakes weren't working? She called out for you. She screamed your name as she went over that cliff. The cruelty in her voice was inhuman. This wasn't my daughter anymore. Maybe it never had been. She died knowing that the daughter she loved, the child she sacrificed everything for, had sentenced her to death for money. Cassandra straightened up. And now you're going to die knowing the same thing. Dr. Reeves was preparing a syringe. Dr. Vasquez was opening what looked like restraints. Vincent Torino was blocking the door. They thought they had me trapped. They had no idea that in 30 seconds, their entire world was about to explode. You made one crucial mistake, Cassandra, I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong, dropping the confused old man act completely. You assumed I was as stupid as you are greedy. Her eyes widened as she realized the man sitting before her wasn't the confused victim she thought she'd been manipulating. Dr. Reeves, I should mention that syringe you're holding contains evidence of premeditated assault. Vincent, blocking that door makes you an accomplice to kidnapping and attempted murder. And Dr. Vasquez, and I looked at the woman with the restraints. Your facility is about to be raided by the FBI for suspicious patient deaths. You're bluffing, Cassandra said, but I could hear uncertainty creeping into her voice. Am I? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. This call has been connected to the FBI for the past 15 minutes. They've heard every word you've said, including your confession to murdering your mother. Richard Peterson dropped the legal documents like they were on fire. Harrison, I had no idea. Of course you did, Richard. 20 years of friendship, and you sold me out for whatever she promised you. I stood up slowly, and suddenly I didn't feel like a 72-year-old man with Alzheimer's. I felt like the corporate predator who'd built a $40 billion empire. Did you really think I'd built this fortune by being naive about human nature? Dr. Reeves was backing toward the window. This is all a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I said, was thinking you could outsmart someone who's been playing chess while you've been playing checkers. That's when I heard the sound that made my heart sing. Cars pulling into my driveway. Multiple cars. Cassandra, I want you to look outside. She moved to the window, her face pale. What did you do? I did what any good businessman does when he discovers embezzlement and fraud. I called the authorities. Through the window, we could all see FBI agents in tactical gear surrounding the house. Behind them were local police, forensics teams, and what looked like a SWAT van. You see, I continued, while you were planning my murder, I was building a case against you. Every conversation recorded, every financial transaction traced, every conspiracy documented. Marcus Rivera has been investigating you for weeks. Vincent Torino was frantically trying to open the window, but I'd had special locks installed years ago after a kidnapping threat against Margaret. Oh, Vincent, don't bother. This house is more secure than most prisons. And speaking of prisons, you should know that your financial manipulation scheme has been completely unraveled. Every fake account, every fraudulent transfer, every forged signature. The doorbell rang, followed by a loud, authoritative voice. FBI, open the door. Dr. Vasquez, I said conversationally, I should mention that 3 of your former patients at Sunset Manor didn't actually die from natural causes. Their families have been asking questions that are about to be answered. She dropped the restraints and stumbled backward. "I want a lawyer. You'll need several." But Cassandra wasn't done fighting. She pulled something from her purse, a small pistol I'd never seen before. "Nobody move," she said, pointing it at me with surprisingly steady hands. "FBI or no FBI, you're not going to destroy me." "Cassandra, put the gun down," Dr. Reeves pleaded. "You're making this worse." "Worse?" She laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. "I've spent 20 years planning this. 20 years waiting for the perfect moment to take everything that should have been mine from the beginning. Everything that should have been yours." I stared at my daughter, this stranger with my eyes, and Margaret's smile, who had murdered my wife and planned to murder me. "You had everything. Love, money, opportunity. What more could you have wanted?" "Control!" she screamed. "I wanted control. Do you know what it's like being Harrison Blackwell's daughter, living in your shadow, waiting for you to die so I could finally be free? So, you killed your mother instead. Mom was weak. She would have left everything to you, and you would have lived forever out of spite." The gun was shaking now, but I outsmarted both of you. The FBI was pounding on the door now. "This is your final warning. Open the door or we're coming in." "Here's what's going to happen," Cassandra said, tears streaming down her face, though whether from rage or desperation I couldn't tell. "You're going to call them off. You're going to tell them this was all a misunderstanding. And then you're going to sign those papers and check yourself into Sunset Manor voluntarily. Or what? You'll shoot me? In front of FBI agents and police, if I have to." That's when Maria Santos did something that probably saved my life. She'd been hiding in the kitchen since the meeting started, part of our plan, and she chose that moment to drop a cast-iron skillet on the floor. The loud crash made Cassandra spin around, and in that moment of distraction, I did something I hadn't done since my army days 50 years ago. I tackled someone half my age. The gun went off as we hit the ground, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling. Cassandra was stronger than I'd expected, fighting like a wild animal, clawing and biting. But I was fighting for my life, and more importantly, I was fighting for justice for Margaret. That's when the front door exploded inward, and FBI agents flooded into my living room with weapons drawn. "Freeze! Nobody move!" But the fight was already over. I was holding the gun, and Cassandra was sobbing beneath me, finally defeated. As they pulled her to her feet and read her rights, she looked at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over, old man. You might have won today, but you still have Alzheimer's. You'll still forget everything. You'll still die confused and alone." I looked at my daughter, my greatest failure, my deepest regret, and said the last words I would ever speak to her. "Maybe I will forget everything else, Cassandra, but I'll never forget that my own daughter is a murderer." As they led her away in handcuffs, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. 3 days after Cassandra's arrest, I thought I could finally breathe. The FBI had seized all her assets, arrested her co-conspirators, and assured me that she'd spend the rest of her life in prison for murder, conspiracy, and attempted elder abuse. Justice, it seemed, had been served. I was wrong. Jonathan Meyer called me at 6 a.m. on Friday morning, his voice grim. "Harrison, we have a problem, a big one." "What kind of problem?" "Cassandra's legal team filed an emergency motion yesterday. They're claiming everything she did was actually directed by you." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "They're arguing that you orchestrated the entire scheme as an elaborate test, that you were never actually in danger, and that you manipulated federal agents into arresting innocent people based on your paranoid delusions." That's insane. The recordings. They're claiming the recordings prove you were lucid and in control the entire time, which means you deliberately deceived law enforcement. And Harrison, Jonathan's voice got quieter. "They have evidence." "What evidence?" "Video footage of you meeting with Marcus Rivera weeks before the arrest. A video of you setting up the shell companies. Video of you planting the recording devices." He paused. "They're painting you as a puppet master who used your Alzheimer's diagnosis to manipulate everyone around you." My blood turned cold. But that doesn't make sense. Why would I? They claim you did it because you wanted to test Cassandra's loyalty, and when she failed your test, you decided to destroy her out of spite. They're saying a man with $40 billion and unlimited resources could easily manufacture evidence against anyone, even his own daughter. Linus, I stared out the window at the garden Margaret had loved, trying to process what I was hearing. Jonathan, you know that's not true. I know it's not true, but Harrison, there's something else. Something that changes everything. What? They found something in Margaret's car. My heart stopped. Her car was destroyed in the accident 20 years ago. Not all of it. The insurance company kept the brake system for their investigation. It's been sitting in a warehouse in Nevada all this time. Jonathan's voice was barely a whisper. Harrison, the brakes weren't sabotaged. The room started spinning. What do you mean? There was no tampering, no sabotage, no murder. Margaret's death was exactly what it appeared to be, a tragic accident caused by brake failure due to poor maintenance. But the mechanic, Frank Delacourt, died in an accidental house fire caused by faulty wiring. There was never any murder, Harrison. There was never any conspiracy. I collapsed into my chair, my mind reeling. But Cassandra confessed. She said she killed Margaret. Did she? I've been reviewing the recordings. She made vague statements that could be interpreted as confessions, but she never explicitly said she killed anyone. She talked about people outliving their usefulness and making difficult decisions, but in context, those could refer to planning your care, not planning murders. The insurance money was standard life insurance that Margaret had carried for years. There was nothing suspicious about the payout. I felt like I was drowning, but the financial theft, the forged signatures, were real. Cassandra absolutely was stealing from you and planning to have you declared incompetent. That part is completely true. Jonathan paused. But Harrison, the murder charges won't stick, and her defense team is about to argue that your accusations of murder prove that your Alzheimer's has made you paranoid and delusional. So what does that mean? It means they're going to flip this entire case. Instead of Cassandra being the villain who tried to steal from her sick father, they're going to make her the victim of a rich, powerful man who used his resources to destroy his daughter when she tried to get him the medical care he needed. I couldn't breathe. That's not what happened. I know that. You know that. But to a jury who sees a confused old man with Alzheimer's accusing his daughter of a 20-year-old murder that never happened, Jonathan sighed heavily. Harrison, they might actually believe her version. That's when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see news vans lining my street. Reporters with cameras and microphones were camped outside my gates. Jonathan, there are reporters outside. I know. Cassandra's team leaked the story. By tonight, this will be national news. Billionaire with Alzheimer's falsely accuses daughter of murder. I turned on the television, and there it was on every news channel. My face next to Cassandra's, with headlines like "Family Destroyed by Disease" and "When Dementia Turns Deadly." But the worst part was the interview they were showing. Cassandra, in her jail jumpsuit, talking to a reporter through the prison glass. "My father is a brilliant man who built an amazing business empire," she was saying, tears streaming down her face. "But Alzheimer's has changed him. It's made him paranoid, suspicious, even violent. I was only trying to help him get the care he needed, and he turned that love into a weapon against me." She looked directly into the camera. "I don't blame him for what he's done. This disease has stolen the father I love and replaced him with someone who sees enemies everywhere. I just hope that other families can learn from our tragedy." The reporter's voiceover continued. "Legal experts say this case raises serious questions about elder care, mental competency, and the power of wealth to manipulate the justice system. Miss Blackwell's defense team argues that her father used his vast resources to manufacture evidence and manipulate federal agents into arresting innocent people." I turned off the television, my hands shaking. My own daughter hadn't just tried to steal my fortune and destroy my life. She'd found a way to make herself the victim and me the villain. Even in defeat, she was still playing chess, while everyone else was playing checkers. But there was something Jonathan didn't know, something I hadn't told anyone, and tomorrow that something was going to change everything again. The next morning, I made a decision that would either vindicate me completely or destroy what was left of my reputation forever. I called a press conference. "Mr. Blackwell," Jonathan Meyer said desperately over the phone, "this is legal suicide. Anything you say can and will be used against you. The media will tear you apart." "They're already tearing me apart," I replied, watching the news trucks multiply outside my gates like vultures. "But there's something I haven't told you, Jonathan. Something I haven't told anyone." "What?" "I have proof of everything, real proof. The kind that can't be explained away or manipulated." The press conference was set for 2 p.m. in the ballroom of the Beverly Hills Hotel. Every major news network was there, along with reporters from around the world. The story of the billionaire with Alzheimer's who'd falsely accused his daughter of murder had become international news. I walked into that room wearing my best suit, my mind clearer than it had been in months. The irony wasn't lost on me. A man with a disease that steals memories was about to reveal the most important secret of his life. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, standing behind the podium like I had thousands of times during my business career, "my name is Harrison Blackwell, and I'm here to tell you the truth about my daughter, about my wife's death, and about something that will shock you more than anything you've heard so far." The room was dead silent except for the clicking of cameras. 3 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. My daughter Cassandra saw this as an opportunity to steal my fortune and have me declared incompetent. This part of the story you already know. I paused, looking directly into the cameras. "What you don't know is that I've been investigating my wife's death for 20 years, not because I suspected murder, but because I loved her so much that I could never let go of the questions that surrounded her accident." I pulled out a manila folder and set it on the podium. In this folder are the results of a private investigation I commissioned 5 years ago, an investigation that discovered something the police missed 20 years ago, something that changes everything. The reporters leaned forward, sensing something big was coming. My wife Margaret didn't die because her brakes were sabotaged. She died because someone had been drugging her for months with a medication that causes confusion, disorientation, and delayed reflexes. Someone who had access to her food, her drinks, her daily routine. I opened the folder and pulled out laboratory reports. Hair samples preserved from Margaret's hairbrush, analyzed with modern technology that didn't exist 20 years ago, show consistent levels of a powerful sedative in her system. Levels that would have made driving extremely dangerous. The room erupted in whispers and camera flashes. The person who was slowly poisoning my wife, waiting for her to have an accident that would look completely natural, was... That's when the doors to the ballroom burst open. FBI agents flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Behind them came Cassandra's defense attorney, James Morrison, one of the most powerful lawyers in California. "Harrison Blackwell, you're under arrest for evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and fraud," the lead agent announced. The room exploded into chaos. Reporters were screaming questions. Cameras were flashing. Security guards were trying to control the crowd. "Those laboratory reports are fabricated," Morrison shouted over the noise. "This man has used his vast wealth to manufacture false evidence against his daughter. He's trying to frame an innocent woman because his diseased mind has made him paranoid and vindictive." As the handcuffs closed around my wrists, I looked directly into the nearest camera. The person who was poisoning my wife was... "Don't say another word," Morrison yelled. "This man is having a psychotic break brought on by Alzheimer's disease. Nothing he says can be trusted." As they led me away, I could hear the reporters shouting questions. "Who was poisoning your wife? Are the lab reports real? What proof do you have? Did your daughter kill her mother?" But I was already being pushed into a federal vehicle, and the answers to those questions, the truth that could exonerate me and expose the real killer, remained unspoken. In the back of the FBI car, as we drove away from the chaos, one question burned in my mind. Had I just solved a 20-year-old murder? Or had my own daughter outsmarted me one final time? And more importantly, would anyone ever learn who really killed Margaret Blackwell? The truth was closer than anyone realized. But sometimes the most shocking revelations come from the most unexpected sources.